Hello and welcome to Procrastination Points video Snark. I'm continuing with my sarcastic book review of The Mister by E.L. James. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 17. At the end of the previous chapter, Max declared that he wanted Elisa's heart, which I had interpreted to mean that he wanted to win her over. However, now he reels with the idea that he's in love with her. It's one part shock, one part, wow, I'm in love with the lady who cleans my apartment. Elisa also thinks about how in love with him that she is, and I know that I already said that Elisa is probably confused because of her vulnerable emotional state after having been rescued from a human trafficking ring, but I'm pretty sure that Max's feelings are simply because of having been with her physically. The dude's been thinking with his downstairs head this entire time, so forgive me if I'm rolling my eyes extra hard over these random and insanely quick decisions of love. They stop at a shop to buy food for Elisa to cook them dinner that night. As they're returning back to the estate, Elisa thinks about Magda and Michael and how they're getting on. She and Max talk about the movie soundtrack that they're listening to in the car. Elisa asks, admittedly belatedly, if there's any food that Max doesn't like, and he says that, "No, I eat pretty much anything. I went to boarding school," he answers. Which, no correlation. Back at the house, after they unpack their groceries, Elisa goes upstairs to sort through her new clothes. Max sits around and thinks about what to do with the knowledge that he's in love with Elisa. She's here with me. That means something, surely. Pardon my French, but how completely and utterly out of touch with literally anything could Max possibly be? It's like even James herself forgot that she'd written about the trafficking. Max is so concerned with the thought of betting Elisa that he forgot that he took her from London because she was being hunted like an animal. And then this book hates me, and he follows this up by him thinking about those guys whom he calls gangsters. I'll excuse it because Elisa never told Max their names, but mainly because people like that probably don't deserve to have names. But this entire thing is just so disgusting and wrong to me because he knows that she was being hunted. He addresses this in his follow-up thoughts to wondering why she's there. Elisa knows that Dante had come to Magda's house. She saw Dante show up at Max's house, knows that anywhere in the community of Polish immigrants in London, they'll find her. She was all out of options if she wanted to remain safe. But Max doesn't view it like that. He seems to be of the opinion that literally the only reason why Elisa went with him is simply because she wanted to sleep with him. Max then turns to the idea of helping Elisa gain legal status in the UK. He thinks about asking one of the people who now works for him what he can do to help her, and then he thinks that it would be too weird and awkward to do that. His next thought is to marry her, which I saw coming from a mile away, but I still think that it's repugnant. One tiny point that doesn't make this entire thing even more of a show is that at least Max wants to talk to her about it rather than him pressuring her into marrying him for the sake of gaining status as a citizen. Later, Max reads about Albania on his phone. He goes downstairs, drawn by the smell of Elisa cooking dinner, which he says is a thank you to Max. He asks her more about Albania, about her life in the village where she grew up. She says that she doesn't know how to drive, that there weren't even any cars in the country until communism fell. Max offers to teach her how to drive, but she seems afraid by it. She then asks to call Magda. Max listens in on her side of the conversation, glad that Elisa is smiling. Lisa tells him that they're grateful for the security guard Max hired for her as they wrap up their life in the UK. They eat dinner and talk about things. Max asks about her day-to-day life in Albania, and she tells him. However, he can't help but remark that it sounds rather dull, and she agrees with him. However, the things she says about her father are less than complimentary, even though she doesn't exactly say a whole lot. She says she misses her mother, but that she doesn't think that she can go back home, ever. When pressed about this, she admits that she is betrothed, which, okay, sure, I guess there needed to be something that would stretch this out even longer. Chapter 18. To say that Max is surprised about Elisa's betrothal is a bit of an understatement. He even uses the word medieval to describe it, which, yeah. The other day I was talking with my boyfriend about this novel, and I was trying to express to him that James is trying so hard to make Elisa into a backwater country bumpkin who doesn't know anything about the real world. I kept bringing up communism because the book itself is hung up over Albania's communist past. However, as he pointed out, most young people don't remember communism, and I was like, Elisa is 23 years old. She stated this directly to Max when he asked her. This book takes place in, I want to say, 2019 when the book came out. If that's the case, Elisa was born in 1996. Google lists the final date of the fall of communism as 1991. And maybe this is just more math than James is willing to deal with, but that's a 5-year age gap between the end of communism and Elisa's birth. Forget about the other 23 years in between her birth and the present. Literally, none of this makes any sense. My boyfriend said that it was probably because James wanted to have that oppressed girl who doesn't understand how the world works but still make her be white, which I can't really say what James's actual motivation for having Elisa be from Albania is, but that sounds about right. Right. Freudian slip, I swear. Max asks for clarification about what she meant by betrothed. She explains that it's literally the entire reason why she left Albania. If she'd stayed, then she would have been forced into this marriage by now. However, Max is wholly of the opinion that this is something that Elisa wanted, and that in itself is just baffling to me. There is absolutely nothing about the way that she's speaking about this man, of her saying that she literally left Albania just to get away from the situation, all the way to her body language of Elisa cringing away from Max and bursting into tears as she's telling him about this other man, that gives any indication that this is a wanted relationship. After confirming that Elisa's father arranged the entire thing and Elisa wants no part of that relationship, he randomly asks to dance with her. He wants to be with her physically again and convinces her not to do the dishes in order for them to do that. And he's back on the nonsense about marrying her now that the pesky side plot about the betrothal is out of the way. I really want for the betrothal plot to stick around, for this guy to show up in search of his runaway would-be bride, if only because literally nothing is happening. Heck, I'd even take Dante showing up in search of Elisa. I'm fine with plots about overall emotional turmoil, but the problem with this book, as it was with 50 Shades, is that any sort of problematic emotional issues are quickly swept under the rug and ignored in favor of bedroom activities. Max doesn't care about Elisa's betrothal, the wreck that it made of her emotional state. He only hated the idea that he may not be able to have her, and the second that he confirms that he can still have her, he quickly drags her into doing something else and makes no effort to soothe her obviously frazzled nerves over having told him about this. He convinced her to sleep with him again less than a page later. They bang. And there's nothing interesting in this. I wasn't expecting for it to be plot relevant, and it's not, so I'm moving on. Afterward, Elisa lies back and thinks about how her mother had never told her how good that it can feel. However, this puts Elisa down a path that makes her question the relationship her parents have, and obviously there's something going on between her parents, but I'm not quite sure if we're ever going to actually reach that point or not. Her mind turns to Max about his reaction towards finding out about her betrothal and she thinks about how worried she was that Max was going to beat her, while simultaneously heavily implying that her father had beaten her before. Charlie Swan would not approve of this nonsense. The next morning, Max says that they should spend the day in bed, and then we gloss over another adult scene between the two of them, which good, because I kinda don't care. These are mediocre at best, forgettable, and leaving no lasting impression with me. Later, Max comes out from the bathroom to find Elisa went downstairs to cook breakfast. He name-drops the Sonos app, and I swear that this book was sponsored by it. He also randomly thinks that Dua Lipa, whose song that Elisa picked out, is Albanian, which, okay. They eat and have more bedroom activities. It's boring and uninspired, and I'm more than ready to move on to them doing literally anything else. Even the tedious shopping trip from the other chapter would be preferable in comparison. Max wakes up to the sound of Elisa playing the piano, and he's momentarily distracted by how amazing she is. They bang yet again. Dear Lord, that poor girl must be so chafed downstairs. I am hurting just thinking about it. She initiated it, but still. After that, Elisa says that she feels pretty sore as she tries to sit up. Max is worried about her and expresses that he wishes that she had told him so that they wouldn't have gone at it like rabbits all day long. However, Elisa is of the opinion that if she told him she hurt, then he wouldn't have kept doing it so much. Like, girl. We all know it feels good, but do you want to know what doesn't feel good? That. And I'm just thinking of how tender certain female parts tend to get after messing around with them too much in a short amount of time. They get into the shower together where Max washes all over Elisa. However, he stops himself from going further, which is probably the absolute bare minimum of decent behavior after she'd expressed how sore she was, and it should not be applauded. Later, as Elisa sleeps next to him, Max thinks about how this was the absolute best day ever. He wants to tell Elisa who he is and plans on doing it tomorrow, which this book is slowly reaching the end, so we might as well try to squeeze one last bit of conflict in, hopefully. Although I'm also hoping for a final appearance of Dante. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because sometimes I drop random videos on other days too. You can like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you don't miss a single video. While you're waiting for the next video, you can go check out all my other videos. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main Snarks, and you can find even more Snarks on my Patreon, you can access it for $1 a month. Plus, you get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, you either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snark so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $3 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, $3 for every 5,000 words. You can contact me on Tumblr if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have 19 erotic short stories, 1 short story collection, and 1 full-length novel. I also sometimes run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you know when I might be offering more things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!